most alien country I've been to is Peru. About 10 years ago, I went down there for a week. Lima, the mountain city of Cusco, Machu Picchu, and then up to the Amazon. I don't know where the word comes from. It might be Indian or even Mayan. I don't know what it means, but it comes awfully close to amazing, and that's just what it is. We flew into Iquitos, the major city of the Peruvian Amazon, and it was incredibly hot and humid, even though it was really late at night. I'm not sure where we stayed that night, but I do remember the next morning we were herded onto this long, narrow motorboat and taken up the Amazon to our jungle lodgings. But why am I talking about the Amazon? Why am I talking about the jungle? Make no mistake about it, the jungle is the most alien place in the world. But again, why am I talking about Peru and the Amazon and the jungle? Well, tonight I have in the studio with me a man who lived there for more than 7 years. Demetri Efthyvoulos is a Cypriot, a professional photographer, and a man who talks passionately about the destruction of the rainforest. A man who spent time with the native shamans and healers of the Amazon. And last Saturday he gave a slide and lecture show called Spirits of the Amazon Jungle or Other Aspects of Reality. Really, it was other aspects of reality. And after hearing him speak and seeing the slides, all I can say is amazing. I used the word earlier to describe the Amazon, and it's very appropriate for the pictures that I saw. The photographs by an amazing man. I think of him as a seeker of truth. Demetri Efthyvoulos. Welcome to Graffiti. How are you this evening?
Thank you for your welcome. I'm very well. I'm very happy to be with you and talk about what you mentioned.
Well, I guess my first question is, I know that you were forced to leave Cyprus because of the Turkish invasion back in '74. Is that when you became a photographer?
Yes. Up to the invasion, for the 4 last years before that, I was a real estate agent in Kyrenia, the northern city of Cyprus, the most beautiful city of Cyprus. When the invasion happened, because my brother, Alex Efthyvoulos, is a very well-known journalist, I went along with him and I became a photographer and journalist during the invasion and for a few weeks after that.
And I guess the next question I have for you is, of all the places in the world, why Peru?
I guess fate. After September 1974, which was a couple of months after the invasion of Turkey, I went to London and I worked there for about 6.5 years as a refugee, doing almost everything: photography, minicabbing, waiter, receptionist, etc. And I was also very interested in mysticism and self-development. And through that interest, I met a group of people who were going to the Amazon, to the Peruvian Amazon, for 2 years to study medicinal plants. And I joined them as a photographer for that expedition. So they had their own yacht, the Heraclitus, and we went off through the Atlantic, up the whole Amazon to Peru. They had this agreement with the University of Iquitos. Iquitos is a big Peruvian city in the Peruvian jungle, on the Amazon. It is the capital of the Peruvian jungle, and it has this university, and these people were going to study medicinal plants in agreement with this university. So that's how I got there.
And you stayed for 7.5 years, so evidently something happened that extended the 2 years.
Actually, the expedition did not last very long. After 2 or 3 months, for certain reasons, it was terminated by the university. But I decided to stay because I thought, since I always felt an attraction to nature and I was already in the jungle, I thought it would be a pity to leave once I was there. So I stayed.
And did you speak either Spanish or any of the native Indian dialects or anything?
No, I did not. And you might be amused to know that my camera was broken, I was penniless, and I didn't speak the language. So I said, okay, this is a good opportunity to stay. And I did. So I worked as with an ancient Mamiya flex twin reflex, which by now must be 45 years old. I was doing children's portraits for a plate of beans and carried on like that. Of course, I was very interested in the shamans, in the healers, in the magicians of the region, and that was my main interest.
I definitely want to ask you a number of questions about the shamans. How did you find them, or did they find you, or?
In one of the international congresses I attended, which was in Lima, which there were 36 countries with 600 participants, and the point was strongly made that 70% of the world population does not have access to a doctor like we know doctors in the West. Their doctors, their medicine comes from healers, from shamans. So in Iquitos, which is a city of 350,000, you have a shaman around every corner. And of course, in the nearby villages, you have any other number of shamans, and if you are interested, it's very easy to find them.
And did you practice with them? Did you?
Yes, I did. I practiced with several of them, and each one is not it doesn't have a definite form. Each one practices in his own way. And of course, the amazing part is that because of the powerful influence of the church at one time, from the beginning of the conquest, they were persecuted, and even now the church frowns upon their practices. So it's very amusing to listen to old Emilito, for example, who is about 10 kilometers outside Iquitos in the jungle. So when he starts his shamanic ritual, he first looks up to the ceiling of his hut and he addresses the Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ, and he begs their permission to carry on with his practices, and he asks them to stop him if they don't like it.
Oh, interesting. When you study with them, I've read some of Carlos Castaneda's books, and I've even taken courses in shamanism. And one of the things that in the course that I took was traveling to the underworld. And of course, Castaneda had all his experiences with turning into an eagle and various animals. I guess part of his totem. Did you have any experiences like that? Did you go into the underworld? Did you turn into your animal totem?
The whole of the Amazon culture is based on psychotropic plants. The well-known ayahuasca in Peru, yagué in Colombia, and daimé in Brazil. This is one of the several psychotropic plants that the shamans use there, and the taste is horrible. You need special diet, special preparation. A lot has been written about this by several authors, and like in Carlos Castaneda, as you said, you might travel to the underworld or to other worlds. You are guided by the shaman, by the maestro, as they call him, and you take off for a couple of hours. It tastes horrible. You very often 50% of the people who are taking part vomit, even though they are on a diet and on an empty stomach. But it seems to open other doors of knowledge.
Could you tell me about some of those doors that were open for you?
Well, for me, it gave me the opportunity to make this photographic innovation, which couldn't be simpler, really. You take a photograph of the jungle reflected in calm water, and you just turn it to have the water line at a 90-degree angle to the horizontal, and there you find the most amazing images, like faces, like totems, like feline creatures, and so on, which look very much like the culture of these people, and which I have actually 2 recordings of interviews with shamans who are also professors. The one is a professor in a college in southern Colombia, and the other one is near Leticia, also in Colombia, who say, yes, these photographs, these images are what they consider to be their spirits.
I just wanted to remind everybody you're listening to Graffiti on HBR, and tonight we're talking to Demetri Efthyvoulos about his life on the Amazon, and sounds like an incredible life. The whole shaman thing just fascinates me, and I've seen the images. I was at your lecture Saturday, as I mentioned earlier, and they truly are incredible. I personally found them to be almost Indian from India. They were so textured and so complex, which I think of the Indian hierarchy of gods and everything, with the elephants and everything, and I just saw so much of that in that. I'm sure it's a universal thing. And did the shaman speak about that at all?
Yes, and in any case, I gave many lectures and exhibitions in Latin America and elsewhere, and I mentioned that I have the hypothesis that these images must be related with the cultures of those people. I have mentioned that within the hearing of anthropologists, psychologists, and so on, and quite often there is a reaction. They say, oh, not only in the jungle, like you said, the same as with India, and so on. And I had the experience also with people from India who saw it, and they start jumping up and saying, this is such and such a god, and this is such and such a god from their cultures. Of course, let's not forget that you have the ink spot, the roshar, that is used in psychology, and it's a very simple doubling of the image. And here you could say that basically it is a very glorified roshar, except it's much, much richer and more exciting. And my point is that it proves that we don't see what is under our nose, either in front of us or inside us. And we can see this in these pictures. I always say during my lectures that if people look at paintings by classical painters who have done paintings over still water, they might render the part above the water in great detail and beauty. But when they come to the water line and they go down below it, they begin to improvise. The same with, I have seen pictures in the National Geographic and elsewhere in brochures where the effect I'm showing with turning my photographs sideways, you can find it yourselves if you have photographs over still water. Look them up and turn them around, and you'll probably find these images that I'm talking about.
Right. It was funny because to get ready for this interview, I watched a lot of videos on the Amazon, and I kept on tilting my head to the side whenever they were showing water shots so I could see the reflective image. I think we're going to go to some music that Demetri's brought with us, with him tonight, that he's actually recorded down on the Amazon. So we're going to play some of that music now. while we continue. I tell you the truth, I didn't even want to stop for the music because this is so fascinating to me, but I felt that we should hear some of this music that came right from the Amazon. And just remember, you're listening to Graffiti on HPR, and tonight we're talking to Demetri Efthyvoulos about his life on the Amazon and his experiences with shamanism, and we're going to talk about some other things also. During the break, you were mentioning a ceremony that you participated in back in, what'd you say? Manaus.
Manaus is the capital of the Brazilian jungle. It is a big city on the Amazon, 2 million people. It's a free trade area. There are a lot of factories there, and people from Brazil can go and buy things duty-free. So while I was there, I gave an exhibition and a slideshow at INPA, the government organization that studies the Amazon, the jungle. So while I was there, I received a phone call from the president of La Unión del Divino Vegetal, the Union of the Divine Plant. It was the beginning of the year, and he invited me to this ceremony at their lodge, which takes 600 people, and they all take this hallucinogen that I mentioned earlier, which in Brazil is called Santo Daime. And also, I was shown slides by an anthropologist friend in another village in southwestern Brazil. There is a church, and the fresco at the entrance of the church has the Virgin Mary on one side and Jesus Christ on the other, and above them you have a drawing of the divine plant stretching over their heads, and the priest administers this Santo Daime to the congregation in the church on every occasion.
So the whole idea of the religion of the Amazon has gotten to be just a combination of their own religion, the hallucinogenic religion, and the religion that was brought in from the European cultures.
That is right, yeah.
Amazing.
And I mean, it happens with the peyote in Mexico and with many other cultures, that the native cultures in Latin America who use these substances as part of their religion, like they have always been using them. The Incas were always using the ayahuasca. It is documented, and it was part of their culture.
Right. Well, I would love to spend another 2 hours talking about this, but I do want to also ask you about some of the things that are going on down in the Amazon basin. I mean, the fact that one of the things I found out is that they're cutting down the forest at the rate of 20 football fields a minute. What is happening down there? Is it still as bad as it was a number of years ago?
Well, of course, I haven't been there just recently, but as we read from the newspapers, from the media, I mean, all the time we get television shows, we get newspapers, magazine articles, and it is happening. And at the same time, we must not forget that the people there get a little bit upset when the West talks about the destruction of the rainforest. They say that it is also happening in the West. It is happening here in the United States. And it is happening in many other parts of the world. And they also say, don't only look at the destruction of the rainforest, look at the other causes that are destroying nature. And I mean, do we have to mention anything else apart from what happens to the radioactive waste from the nuclear industry? As you know, the scientists who are involved in that are so desperate to get rid of that waste that in some cases there are reports that leaders of poor third world countries are being bribed to accept that waste in their country because those who are trying to get rid of it don't like to keep it near them. So they find these poor fellows and they load this stuff onto them.
Incredible.
So, I mean, that's far worse than rainforests.
Right. We have a caller, and thank you for holding on.
Hello, Bill.
Hi. Hey, how are you tonight?
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you to you and to your guest. The program is absolutely fascinating.
Isn't it?
It's beautiful.
I'm blown away by it.
Educational.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Do you have any specific questions that you have?
Well, no, I just have a comment that, as always, the Greeks, Ulysses lives,
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have to say that.
Well,
please continue. I'm listening and I'm learning, and it's fascinating.
Great. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Okay, so we're back, and I understand that one of the other arguments that they often make is that should we be denied the progress that the West has? If destroying the rainforest means we're going to get wealth and prosperity for our people, should that be denied us? And it's a very difficult argument. I just, you can't destroy the rainforest. It's going to destroy our ecosystem if that happens. But should people be denied the right to have a higher level of living?
Shall we start with, by now it's an old story, Chico Mendes, the head of the Rubber Collectors Trade Union in Accra, in Brazil. He was an international figure for his work for the protection of the environment. Recently I saw a film about him on television. He was assassinated. By whom was he assassinated? By the landlords. So, and his point was that if the jungle is exploited properly, it does not have to be destroyed. It yields its riches, but not the way that the West understands it. For example, in Brazil, they are building these huge water dams. They are flooding huge areas of the jungle, destroying countless numbers of trees and driving the tribes out of those areas. Is that protecting the rainforest, or is it serving the interests of the multinationals?
Right.
I have a friend, a professor from the University of Iquitos in Peru, who has made a study. I have a copy of that study, and he proves that an area exploited for timber, if the same area is exploited for medicinal plants, the profit will be much bigger and the destruction will be zero. The trees will continue living. You take a bit of their bark, you take a bit of their leaves, you take a bit of their fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And that yields more profit. So there are ways to exploit nature sensibly, and there are ways to exploit nature foolishly. Roads, for example, this has been proved that where they had roads, what did it bring? Did it bring progress for the natives? Did it bring improvement to the rainforest? Or did it bring destruction?
And there's so many things that are going on, like the processing of gold, and they're using mercury, which is contaminating the waters of the rivers, and there are so many species of fish that we haven't even discovered yet down there. Is there anything being done about that?
Yes, well, that's what we read, that scientists are saying that there are so many trees that haven't been studied. There are endless kinds of mosses, mushrooms, countless types of insects we know nothing about, and they're disappearing with the destruction of the rainforest.
I have a question from a friend of mine. Before I came down to the studio tonight, I mentioned to him that I was going to be interviewing you, and he was absolutely fascinated by the idea of living with a primitive culture. Now, I know Iquitos is a major city. Did you find it difficult to go out into the jungle and find people living in a primitive way and actually spend time with them?
not enough, not as much as I would like to. And I found very easily and very clearly those people are very sensitive and very intelligent in their way. So quite often you might have a Western person who approaches them with a superior air. He is the civilized fellow approaching these heathens, these savage people. So in their sensitivity and their own form of intelligence, they laugh at him, they pretend that they're stupid, and they take the nick out of him.
Who's the stupid one?
And his ego is satisfied. He's proved superior in his idiocy. But if you approach them, I wanted to learn from them. I knew nothing about the jungle, nothing about nature. They could teach me so many things. So I approached them with respect, like I would approach any other human being. And it was very easy to form friendships, and it was very easy to learn from the people who knew more than I did.
Well, I'm afraid we have to go.